Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdés, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdés.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdés, Valdés with an S, at Rich Valdés on all of the social media. And guess what? I'm feeling pretty darn good today. Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdés. Now you say, Rich, why are you feeling so good? Well, number one, because free plug for them. I just had some Café Bustelo, and it's a ground mix with a little bit of Café El Coquí, which is grown in Puerto Rico. But on top of the espresso running through my blood right now, it is a great day because the government is shut down again. And nada me pasó. Nothing has happened to me. Has anything happened to you? Nope. That's exactly the way it goes. All right. Oftentimes, we can have government shutdowns and our lives will continue on as if nothing were happening. This is, it was years ago. Many of you know I have several radio mentors. John Batchelor, Curtis Sliwa, the great one, Mark Levin. And it was the great one, Mark Levin, who once pointed out to me, and everybody else that was listening, right, to his radio show, that the government shuts down every weekend, every holiday, and we get by just fine. And it was at that moment that I realized, these people will never, ever scare me again with that threat. And I thought about that today because I was talking to a young lady, and she was like, what's going on? What's going on with all this shutdown stuff? And my response to her was, well, nothing. What's going on? And she's like, well, because I'm getting texts from all these people. Now, the reason she's getting texts from all these people is because she's a pretty outspoken conservative. And, when people get worried about something, they go to the most outspoken person they know or can find and start saying, well, what are we going to do now? And same thing, right? The points I made last night, I'm not going to repeat them all, but we're going to be okay, right? You, me, and so many of us don't live our lives in need of the government. We really don't. If you call 911, more than likely you're going to get a cop or a fireman or an EMS worker. Those things are not going anywhere. So that's there. Our military continues. Our, Social Security continues. Certain social things may not go on. Like, for example, right? All the Bad Bunny haters might hate this one. But way back when President Reagan was in office, he was famous for saying Hispanics are conservatives. They just don't know it yet, right? And he meant political conservatives. And, of course, they knew that they were socially and culturally conservative. But he was right. And he decided to take Hispanic Heritage Week and make it a month. So President Reagan signed the order to make a Hispanic Heritage Month. 3 extra weeks to the week that was already being celebrated at the national level. And President Trump continues in that tradition, right, of his, celebrating Hispanic heritage. And there was a scheduled Hispanic heritage event in the White House, and that was postponed. Why? Because of the shutdown. So some things do happen, but our safety, our financing, our lives continue the same, right? Maybe one less soiree. One less shindig, but we continue. So when people in my immediate circle start asking, well, what's going on? What with the shutdown? What's going to happen with this? And what's going to happen with that? And the same thing that always happens. Now, of course, this is where people start going to the exception and not the rule, right? They start asking questions like, what if I have to renew my Social Security card. What if I lose it and I have to get a replacement? Well, guess what? You're going to be screwed, right? You might have to figure out another way to do that. I remember we went through COVID, right? The government wasn't even shut down, and it was more shut down than this, right? Because during COVID, you had people that were totally inaccessible, totally, right? People were like, "Oh, I can't get my unemployment benefits. I can't get this. I can't get that." It was a whole different world. This isn't COVID. This is something that we're going to get through just fine. And last night I said the last shutdown I remember being something like 21 days. I totally forgot about. There was one right after that, 35 days. Who remembers that one? I barely remembered it. So we're A-okay. Anyway, we're going to talk about the shutdown, though. We're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about a little Antifa action. And the real opportunity here, I think, is for El Trompito. He made some very, very smart moves strategically, in my opinion. Right? The president basically told Jeffries and Schumer how this was going to go down. If you guys can't agree on this thing and get it going, we're going to get a shutdown. If we get a shutdown, he's pouncing on the opportunity to let everybody know that we don't need all this government. And he's going to be laying people off en masse. So, like clockwork, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, Russ Vought and his team there, they gave a press conference, and they let everybody know that they're planning on these mass federal layoffs. Music to my ears. Here's a quote. This is, let me see, this is Russ Vought talking to Larry Kudlow on Fox Business Channel. Let it be said there are all manner of authorities to be able to keep this administration's policy agenda moving forward, and that includes reducing the size and scope of the federal government. And we will be looking for opportunities to do that. So, in effect, Jeffries, right? Remember last September? Every September, they have these things. And every time there's a budget proposal that would trigger a shutdown, this always happens. And the most recent one, not even last year, just a couple of months ago, was when they decided, oh, we're not going to do that, right? They were all in on shutting down the Democrats. And they said, no, we're not going to do it because it was during Doge, and Doge was dominating the headlines. And they figured if we do this now, we're just going to prove that Trump was right, that we need to eliminate so much of this government. Well, I don't think people have forgotten about Doge just because Elon Musk is not in the White House every day. So I'm thinking this is an opportunity for them to say, oh, by the way, remember all those great reports that Elon put together for us? Look at this. Here we are a week into this, and, you know, other than your Social Security card that maybe you can't get replaced as quickly as you like, we're all right. Do you think we need to keep paying for that? Because let me tell you what this costs you as a taxpayer. And you start putting those numbers out there and saying, this week we just saved this much money. If I take this much money and I take this much money, I do that, we can pay down our deficit, we can pay down the national debt, we can do... I would be selling that all day long. Because ultimately, I think you can beat these people. And by these people, I mean... the Democratic Party, and in particular the radical left within the Democrat Party. And you beat them by playing their game better than they do. Right? They love to malign you in the media. You go in the media, you tell the truth about them. It's bad enough. They go ahead and you lie, you tell the truth. And the other thing you got to do is just take advantage of every opportunity you get to make a political statement. And I think Trump is excellent at this. They say shutdown, he says layoff. How fantastic is that? Now, ultimately, people aren't going to fall apart because we don't have, I don't know, you can't, maybe you can go to the national park, maybe you can't. Honestly, my sympathy is very light for things like that. People, the last proposed shutdown, I had an ex-girlfriend, and she made a post on Instagram. I think she might have even sent it to me. It said something about, denying people access to the people's land, the natural habitats that belong to this country, that belong to the people. It's un-American. And I understood her frustration and her ire. I really did. But at the same time, I thought to myself, at some point, we're just going to go into those parks. Why? Because there is no park ranger to stop you. Why? Because they're all laid off. And guess what? I've been to plenty of parks that don't have park rangers. Now, I'm sure that there's a detriment to that. I'm not calling for the layoff of every last park ranger, but I'm just saying national parks tend to close during shutdowns. Government agencies tend to close during shutdowns. So far, so good. If you have a government shutdown nightmare story, I want you to give me a call and let me know. Straighten me out. Straighten me out. Keep me honest, America. But I'm going to get the scoop from somebody that's on the ground, knows exactly what's going on. Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne is going to be joining us to talk a little bit about what's happening right now with respect to, airports, food stamps, all sorts of things. How is that being affected during the shutdown? And a little bit more on what's going on with the politics of the day, because Antifa is just wilding out in Oregon. So keep it locked right here. We're coming right back with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
I think a lot of Americans are asking themselves, why did this happen? Why did the Democrats shut down the government despite, as Caroline said, voting on the exact same piece of legislation 6 months ago? And there are a lot of different spins that we can put on it, a lot of different answers that we could give, all of them true. One answer I already gave is that they want to give health care benefits to illegal aliens. That is true. They gave us legislative text that would have undone us cutting off health care benefits for illegal aliens. That's one of the things that they asked for. But the reality here, and let's be honest about the politics, is that Chuck Schumer is terrified she's going to get a primary challenge from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The reason why the American people's government is shut down is because Chuck Schumer is listening to the far left radicals in his own party because he's terrified of a primary challenge. So I'd invite Chuck Schumer to join the moderate Democrats and 52 Senate Republicans, do the right thing, open up the people's government, and then let's fix healthcare policy for the American people.
That is Vice President J.D. Vance. And listen, I couldn't agree with him more. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, all out crazy. She has been gunning for Schumer for a hot minute, and she's been gaining strength. That's why she's put up her little comrade who's running for mayor of the city of New York, who I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when he gets spanked by Curtis Sliwa. I think people are sleeping on Sliwa and keep sleeping. They slept on Trump in 2016 also. But I'll tell you this, I expect things to go really interestingly there. And AOC is not going to rest until she continues her conquest to take over New York. I want to get some reaction to what Vice President Vance just said, and really the shutdown overall from somebody who knows what's going on. Her office is on Capitol Hill as well as in her district in Texas. She's been with us before, and she's back with us again. Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, welcome.
Hey, it's great to be on, especially given all that's been happening in the last 24 hours.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know you've got a lot to tell us about, but I think, so many of our listeners are, attuned to what's going on. But there are still many people out there that are very nervous and very fearful of what a government shutdown means. For me, I was telling the audience a little earlier, the great one, Mark Levin, taught me a long time ago. It's like another day on a Saturday or a Sunday or a holiday. The government shuts down quite a bit. And we seem to get through it just fine, and we'll get through this the same way. Your thoughts?
Well, look, I think, Republicans are committed to keeping the government open and running. The president is committed to keeping the government open. It's the Democrats who are holding our country hostage. I mean, they're causing this shutdown so they can satisfy, exactly as Vice President Vance was saying, they can satisfy their radical extremist base that wants Americans paying billions of dollars for illegal immigrant health care. I mean, they requested, the Democrats' so-called proposal was a radical wish list. This was a $1.5 trillion, $1.5 trillion spending increase that was tacked onto a 4-week funding bill. And their demands included reinstatement of free health care for aliens, a $50 billion cut. I mean, I listened to Elizabeth Warren whining on the floor that we're somehow harming, rural health care, and yet their demands were a $50 billion cut to investments in improving rural health care. It was billions of dollars to foreign countries for climate projects and $500 million to prop up liberal news outlets. I think it is very clear what the Democrats are trying to get across on this bill. They want to reverse the November election. They want the bills that we have been able to pass in the Congress, thus far to be ignored, rejected. And it's not going to happen. I mean, but they are completely convinced that this shutdown will somehow benefit them. It is the worst thing. It's a disruption to the services of the American people, and it was completely unavoidable. But, again, Schumer is a coward. He's afraid of the socialist wing of his party that is especially strong, let's face it, in places like New York. Mm-hmm. And you got, the extremists are just hell-bent to spend billions of American taxpayer dollars on health care for illegal immigrants. This shutdown is going to cost us over $400 million a day. And it's absolutely avoidable, and it's absolutely political.
Now, why are we losing $400 million a day instead of saving money since we're shut down?
Every single day that we get shut down, every single day. I think this is in a private sector, it would be called a furlough, because when you shut down, people don't get paid. Everybody that is in the federal government, as soon as they cannot, because I've been through it. I was part of the Trump administration when we had the 35-day, which is the longest shutdown in our nation's history. I was part of that. I was an essential employee. I was the only person in my office who was in the office. And what happens is all the other employees, these non-essential, which I don't know why we have non-essential employees in the government. We've got non-essential employees in the government. They are unable to bring their phones, their computers. They cannot come into the office. They are absolutely unable to work. And what happens is as soon as the government opens back up, they get paid 100%. So you're not saving any money at all by having the government shut down. But what it does do is it creates a massive backlog of work that's not getting done, that the taxpayers are paying for, that is not getting done. And when they open it back up, things like WIC, for example, Women, Infant, and Children's, that program, that expires, that runs out of funding next week. They've got telehealth services for our seniors on Medicaid. That stops. You got 1.3 million active duty troops that will now be working without pay. You've got nearly 50,000 members of the U.S. Guard that will not be paid. You've got 13,000 air traffic controllers that were going to be work and not get paid. You've got TSA agents who are going to be work without pay. This might cause flight disruptions. And you've got 100,000 federal law enforcement officers. And these aren't just statistics. I mean, we throw out these numbers as if they don't mean anything. But every one of these are real people with families and children at home. And, it just doesn't seem like the Democrats care.
Oh, clearly they don't care. But they're using them as pawns. But I ultimately think this was money we were going to spend either way. And it's really the Democrats that lose here. And I'll explain my position on that when we come back. Folks, we're coming right back with Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, Republican from Texas's 24th Congressional District, and me, Rich Valdés. Don't go anywhere.
thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if the viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
I would reject there is inhumane treatment of illegal immigrants in the United States under this administration. There was, however, significant inhumane treatment of illegal immigrants in the previous administration as they were being trafficked and raped and beaten, and in many cases killed, over our United States southern border. You also look at the inhumane treatment at the hands of some of these illegal immigrants that took place under the previous administration as well. Laken Riley comes to mind, a beautiful American citizen who was killed at the hands of an illegal immigrant. So this administration is trying to enforce our nation's laws in the most humane way possible, and we're upholding the law, and we're doing that on behalf of the people of our country who live here.
That is White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt calling out the Biden administration for their inhumane treatment of illegal aliens. In fact, the United Nations, who I'm no fan of, but they called the United States southern border during the Biden administration the most dangerous border crossing in the world because of how bad it was in the 4 years that Biden was in office. Now, I want to talk about illegal immigration a little bit because this seems to be at the crux of this shutdown. Not only is Schumer succumbing to pressure from radical leftists like AOC, all out crazy, but you also have their incessant push to provide health care, I think Medicaid in particular, for every last illegal alien that is just, quite frankly, not affordable. With us to continue the discussion is Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne from the 24th Congressional District in Texas. Congresswoman, talk to us about your thoughts on, A, what Caroline Leavitt had to say, and B, the role that illegal immigrants are playing in this shutdown overall.
Well, look, I think it's obvious what the Biden administration was doing the last 4 years. They didn't care. They were using, illegal immigrants to basically be able to look at districts that had lost normal, sane voters because they had moved. But they didn't want to lose those congressional districts, which rely on population. So even though we were trying to only allow, people who were American citizens to be counted as part of the census, they changed that. So people who were illegally in the country could be counted as part of the census. And then they were filling those spots with people who were illegally here to be able to keep congressional control in the Democrats. That's absolutely, don't take my word for it. Take people like Yvette Clarke that said that that's why they were doing it. Completely open borders. And when you look at how these people were mistreated, the number of women who were raped, the number of girls, boys who were raped on their way here, the amount of sex trafficking, the amount of human trafficking, we basically, the Biden administration worked hand in glove with these cartels to open up probably the worst slave trade that we have had in our country in generations during the last 4 years. You look at the tens of thousands of unaccompanied minors, kids who were lost in the system while the Biden administration was in charge. They absolutely didn't care about that. They didn't care about the whole horrible human tragedy. All it was about was power. And now that they are no longer in control, now that this Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress are working, together to be able to correct a lot of these mistakes, they are doubling down on their crazy. And they are holding an entire country hostage right now, shutting down the government because they are trying to, again, I guess it's sending out some kind of a message that the people that they represent are the ones who are illegally here. And what they're trying to do is, again, add $1.5 trillion onto a 4-week spending bill, which the majority of that is covering free health care for folks who are illegally in our country.
Wild stuff. You really can't make this up. But, of course, they sit there and they say, no, it's because you guys are bad. This is one of those he said, she says that I think most Americans see through. I feel, I don't know, your take. I know you're in New York. What kind of experience have you had with, people just giving you feedback on this? The polls indicate 65% of Americans polled on this think it's a very bad idea, and they hold the Democrats responsible.
Well, I think most people, especially during the Trump administration, recognizing the fact that basically what happens during a shutdown is Congress relinquishes a lot of its control to the executive branch, which was why last year the overwhelming majority of Republicans did not want to vote for a CR, but sucked it up and did it because we could not trust the Biden administration that would actually run the government the correct way. But now under the Trump administration, he basically has Schumer and a lot of the Democrats in a corner, because you have supported these resolutions in the past. You have said all of the fears of closing down the government and why we shouldn't do it, and yet you're supporting it right now. But I think Trump wins either way. One, he is fighting to not shut down the government, but if it does happen, they are going to be very strategic. We had a call with Russ Vought today. The Republicans had a call with him, and he was very clear. We are deciphering the essential workers from the non-essential workers.
And he said they're going to do mass layoffs, no?
Well, no, I didn't say mass layoffs, but what he did say is we're going to try to right size. Nobody is taking glee in anybody losing their job. But what they do want to make sure is, look, if we are going to be, without funding, we're going to make sure that we identify the essential versus the non-essential employees. And we're not looking at furloughs. We're not looking at, government employees who are going to get paid for staying home and not doing anything. We're going to actually go in and surgically cut through a lot of the fat that may exist. And so this is not a threat. This is what you do when you don't have the funding to keep the government open, is you look at ways of being able to right size. And I don't think Democrats have ever had this threat before that has been, held by an administration that is hell-bent on doing the right thing. And they have been able to bully their way forward and get, all sorts of concessions from Republicans, because they're not holding their own. But this is the difference. You've got a Trump administration that's got the strategy, that's got the people in play, and you've got Republicans in Congress that are holding the line. And this is the first time since I've been in office this happened.
Well, I honestly love it. I think we need to do more of that. Like you said, they've never been faced with that threat before. They should have, and I'm glad they are. And I'm a lot less sympathetic than you are, and I'm glad you are so sympathetic. But if you tell me a bunch of government people are going to be out of work for a little while and get paid anyway later, I'm not too upset about it. But you mentioned bullies before, and I want to talk about bullies. Antifa, a lot more than a bully. They were labeled a terrorist organization, domestic terrorist organization recently, and Senator Cruz had some comments on that earlier, and I just wanted to get your reaction in the last couple minutes that we have with respect to Antifa and all the havoc that they're wreaking in Oregon.
Well, they absolutely. I mean, they need to be called a trans. This whole push. They are a violent left-wing group. I mean, their main purpose is to cause chaos, to overthrow the government, to burn down cities, and attack law enforcement. So, yes, I would definitely identify them as domestic terrorists. And both, you've got Senator Cruz on the Senate side, who is funding this bill, and you've got me, who is supporting this bill on the House side. It's the Stop Funders Act. And exactly what he was talking about was we've got to introduce, a way to be able to investigate and take down these violent organized crime syndicates that are operating in the United States. I mean, they stir up riots in cities, they attack our law officers. And so the purpose of our bill is to be able to go after, and enlarge these RICO standards, these RICO powers, to be able to go after Antifa and its offshoot organizations, like the John Brown Gun Club, right? That was the group that attacked the Alvarado, Texas ICE detention center on July 4th of this year. Just so your audience knows, on July 4th, we saw a violent attack in North Texas, where at least 14 of these anarchists attacked the ICE facility. They lured officers out into the open. They opened fire with AR-style rifles. And this is a well-planned and well-outfitted attack. And we know that there is connections between these violent activist groups and a number of different cells that are working. They are being recruited. They are being paid for, and we've got to go after them. And I am very happy that President Trump has identified them as such, but we have to have laws that go into place that once Trump is no longer president still exist. It doesn't need to be just in an executive order. It actually needs to be longstanding in law. And I think, both Senator Cruz and I, are supporting those types of measures. But you've got to cut this off at the head. Otherwise, it's going to continue to proliferate, and you're going to see more of these violent riots in city after city across the country.
Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne, thank you for sharing that with me. I appreciate it. And let everybody know if they want to keep up to speed with you and all the work you're putting out, how do they follow you?
We come to our website, Beth Van Duyne, easy to find, Beth Van Duyne, and we are on Instagram, Facebook, X, you name it. We really look forward to be able to engage with folks, and really appreciate the work you do, the message that you get out, how you get it out, and just keep it up.
Amen. And ditto. You guys are doing an amazing job with the Stop Funders Act and everything else that you're doing. So I appreciate it, Beth Van Duyne. Thanks for visiting New York. Not everybody wants to come to the Rotten Apple, but we appreciate it. God bless you.
You too. Take care.
Yes, ma'am. And amigos, we continue. Your thoughts, your calls, your reactions, and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Big fan. Your impact is really big. Honored to be here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue with your thoughts, your calls, and reactions to everything going on. And again, I think that Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne is way more generous than me. I don't mind, right? I understand, the Republicans are trying to keep the government open, but I'm always willing for an experiment where we say, yeah, let's see how far we can go. Is the last one 35 days? Let's try 70. I can almost guarantee you that it's the Democrats that'll capitulate every time because their constituency, because their base of support are government employees. You name it, they thrive and rely on the government. And so many of us don't. And I know that there's people that work in the government listening to this, and some of you may call and give me a piece of your mind, and that's okay. It's not toward you per se. But by and large, most Americans in this country don't work for their city, state, local, federal government. They don't, right? Most Americans work in a company, own their company, have their small business, work for a small business. It's not the government dependence that you would think. So I don't think that we should punish these people, but I do think we should show them, America will be okay without this this pressure that you're trying to create. And I think once you show them that, we'll probably never see another one again. Just let it go on as long as it can go on. Now, I understand the backlog and all of that, but nobody's missing a day's worth of work, right? They're going to miss a day worth of work. They're not going to miss a day's pay. And the backlogs, I don't know that, we're going to be paying out overtime here. So I'm still curious to see how that ends up costing us more. I think ultimately if the Office of Management and Budget says, hey, look, after a month or month and a half, say, hey, look, we don't have the funding for these people. We have to let them go. You let them go and you start operating the government with less people. Guess what? You're operating the government with less people. And I guess that for me comes from a place of being a young man. I was 16 and a half. My brother pushed me. He said, I'm going to give you some money. I'm going to help you sign a lease. I want you to open up a barbershop. I was cutting hair out of my house. I had not gone to barber school yet, but I had built up a clientele. I had some skills and trial and error. And I opened this barbershop with him. We purchased it. He was my partner, if you will, but I ended up buying him out from a guy who was a well-established hairstylist. Had 5 stations, so 5 barber chairs. He was a hairstylist. He had his own clientele, so I in effect bought his business, and he remained working for me as the shop manager as per the law. And I started going to school. Transferred in my senior year of high school to finish high school at night. So I could go during the day to cosmetology school so I could, be a legit barber. And that business went well for me. And because it went well, I was able to invest in a startup, with a couple of friends of mine, a retail business where we had contracts with various wireless service providers, sold phones and accessories, and got paid for those contract activations. And again, that was also a decent business for a while. Then it became not so decent, and I pulled out, kind of went on my own. And when I was on my own with no partners, that's when I had a few part-time people helping me. And I remember when the dot-com bubble was about to burst, people started spending less money, and it affected my business. And if I wasn't making money, how was I going to pay my people? So the first thing I did was stop paying myself. That only went so far. So what was the next thing I did? I said, hey, listen, sorry, so-and-so. I'm going to have to, cut back some of your hours. They were like, I can't work for any less hours than I'm working. I said, I understand. So guess what? I saved all of that payroll because now I had to do more work. My 12-hour days became 18-hour days. And that's how life worked for me as a small business owner. I was 19 or 20 at the time. And I learned those lessons then. So for any grown man, congressperson, president, Democrat, whomever, to tell me that, oh my gosh, we have to fund the government. No, I agree with Russ Vought and the Office of Management and Budget. If we don't have the money for this, we have to cut some of the people that work there. That is a reality of life. And it's a reality that I think our government needs. And I think if we've ever seen proof of that, it was during the time that Elon Musk was heading up Doge. We saw so many examples of things that the government doesn't need to do. Congresswoman Beth Van Duyne just pointed out a bunch of those things in her time with us, explaining how they're trying to get still money for foreign environmental stuff. This stuff is all a ruse. These people are hooked on tax dollars, and it's time for the addiction to be broken. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdés keeping you company tonight, live and national. And I want to go to Paul. Paul is calling from Boise. My man, what's on your mind, brother?
Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I just find it ironic that AOC is going to probably have a runoff with Chuck. He'll be a schmuck because she'll steamroll him. I could see it happening.
Yeah.
But, as far as this slowdown, I want to make clear that I hope that the police and the military get paid first. I know there's a lot of people that have health issues and so on and so forth, myself included, but that's how I feel. They're still on the line.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm with you. All I can tell you is they always get paid. I don't know if they get paid first or second or third. I know they always get paid. And of course, I want everybody who's serving in uniform to get paid, and they will. But the issue is, I don't want to ever allow a political adversary to use this as a ploy to try and scare Americans to say, look, you got to do this. You got to let us get this environmental funding money for, overseas issues because they're using and abusing our American military to do it. That's just the wrong thing to do. Paul, thank you for your call. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. On some stations, you'll continue to hear me. On others, you may not, depending on where in the country you are. But either way, take care, good night. God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdés.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdés, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdés.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdés, Valdés with an S, at Rich Valdés on all of the social media. Welcome to another hour of the program. We're live and national. Happy to be here 7 minutes past the top of the hour. And if you want to join us, give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES. And America has a lot of problems on their hands, right? On our hands. And part of the problems are being solved, right? President Trump, I think, has been doing a pretty remarkable job at solving a lot of these problems. But some of them are local problems. Some of them are problems like, for example, you guys know I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but fled to the 6th borough, which is across the Hudson River. We call it North Jersey, Hudson County to be exact. I live in Bergen now. And in Jersey, energy costs, again, conservatively speaking, have gone up by 20%. I would say it's probably a higher number than 20%, but that's the number that, is being published. And a lot of people wonder, how does that even happen? How do you get such a big increase? Is it costing more to generate this electricity? What is going on? Well, the bottom line is we have a very unique system in New Jersey. It's one that our Governor Phil Murphy, he's a genius from Goldman Sachs, and he managed to get reelected. I didn't think he was a great governor, but he's a heck of a talker. And I got to say, he's a charming guy. He's a charming person to speak to. People really get enamored with him when they're talking to him. And I only know this because of what happened to me. I live in a small town, and in my small town, there's a 4th of July parade. And one year, many years ago, not that many, but within the last 8 years, or actually, no, prior to that, because my mom was still alive, when he was first running for governor, the good Governor Murphy was in this parade and walking around, in the parade and talking to people, schmoozing like a politician. And I remember my mother and some other family members speaking to him in the driveway, because the parade route is along my house, and the driveway's right there. And I remember just going over and watching and kind of giving the evil eyes, like, what are you doing? You're talking to that guy. And the bottom line was, I listened to the conversation, a little bit of it I could hear, and they were really having a good conversation. And he was a genuinely respectful, entertaining, fun to talk to kind of guy. And that's the mark of a good politician, right? When you can befriend somebody and deliver a message that may hurt, but they like you already. So, it's like the old saying, people only do business with people they like, right? People buy from people they like, even if you're buying a bad idea. And that's the truth. This is, I think, the popularity of AOC, and even to some degree, Zoran Mamdani. They can sell bad ideas because people like them as people. So I think Murphy falls into that category somewhat. And he's allowed on his watch for the folks at the Division of Rate Counsel and moreover, the utilities in New Jersey to socialize the cost of non-paid bills. Yep, you heard this right. So when somebody doesn't pay a bill, they don't just immediately take the loss on this and use it as a write-off. They have a balance sheet, right? So they don't want to do that. What they do is they collect interest, in New Jersey at least, Public Service, Electric and Gas, PSE&G. They, or whomever you're dealing with, if you don't pay, but I pay, whatever you didn't pay starts to collect interest as they're collecting interest on what you didn't pay, they factor that in and socialize it into the cost of everyone else's bill. What'd you say, Rich? I'll repeat it for you. If you don't pay your bill, everybody else, they call them ratepayers, the other ratepayers pay the non-paid bill along with interest. I had no idea this was a thing until I heard the local radio station here, and I heard this clip. Check this out.
Didn't think that there was anything else in this issue that could shock me more than what you just said. Seriously.
The utility wants you to get that help because at the end of the day, the utility needs their bill to be paid. They don't care if you pay it, if the government pays it, if LIHEAP pays it. As I understand it, the individual ratepayer is not collecting interest on it. What the utility does is it says, I didn't collect $10,000 this month. So I have to carry that, and they put interest on that then is socialized to all ratepayers. So, yes, they're getting interest, but it's not.
Wait. They socialize that to all ratepayers. So, in other words, if there's individuals that can't pay their bill, they don't get a shutoff notice, but everybody else then pays the interest on their unpaid bill?
Oh, it's better than that. If they don't pay their bill, the utility still can put that into what's called an uncollectible fund. And then they get the uncollectibles from the ratepayers who are paying their bills. So this is another reason why we need to help our ratepayers, because the more ratepayers who can't pay their bill, the higher the rates will go up for everybody else.
Yep, you heard that right. That blew me away. That blew me away. I mean, I was just like, what? How does that happen? So New Jersey has a organization. It's a government agency called the New Jersey Division of the Rate Council. And the director of the Rate Council office is Brian Lipman. He's a lawyer, and that's who you just heard talking. And Brian Lipman was on the radio telling everybody that, this is the big bad utility, and they're the one, and this is why you're paying all this extra money. Now, I know if you don't live in New Jersey, this may not be affecting you, but listen carefully. Everything starts in New Jersey first. My friends in conservative talk radio will say it all happens in California and then it goes across the country. No. Many times we school California on how to do it. New Jersey is incredibly left-wing. We started introducing transgender into the public education system by statute years ago, and nobody stopped it. There wasn't enough of a push. Didn't matter how much noise we made. We talked about it. It passed with flying colors because the makeup of New Jersey is the deepest blue you can imagine. This is not like some places that they're like, no, these people they got their heads on right. No, we don't. We do not have our heads on right. I'm amazed I've lasted as long as I have in New Jersey. But I'll tell you this. This can happen in your neck of the woods if it could happen in New Jersey. So there you have it. That clip that you just heard, Brian Lipman, the director of the Office of the Rate Council. People who aren't paying their bills, there's interest on that. That gets socialized to all of the other ratepayers. You tell me how that shouldn't that be illegal, right? Shouldn't we be just paying for the electricity we buy? But it's New Jersey, in all of its Democrat control, that allowed all of this to happen. Now, because of this and many other things, you have a pushback, right? There was a strong showing for Trump. Jersey was almost in play for Trump. So you've got people that are kind of tired of the typical New Jersey stuff. You've seen some local mayor's races switch from the old guard, which was, hey, I got the contracts, I know who to call, blah, 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 to a little bit more, sensible, more local, more grassroots candidates. Still Democrats, but, closer to the people. And New Jersey, for the first time in a long time, is in play, right? Again, this time for governor. Jack Ciattarelli is the Republican candidate running neck and neck with Mikey Sherrill, who's been plagued by scandal after scandal in the last few weeks with respect to her paying fines for her investments and not reporting those investments as a member of Congress, to, discrepancies that we talked about last night with her military record and whatnot. And I have to say, I wish Jack the best of luck. I don't think he has the best team around him. They're not very responsive, and they do what they do. But I do wish him the best in reaching out to his actual supporters as well as non-supporters to be able to get his word out and to get this guy across the finish line, because New Jersey needs a change. And it's that same spirit of change that I think we need in our federal government. And now is the time to bring it about. So I want to get into a discussion about the shutdown, what it means, why we're there, what we can do to get out of it, and really the numbers and the nuts and bolts of it from somebody who really understands the federal budget. Richard Stern is scheduled to join us. He's director of the Center for the Federal Budget at the Heritage Foundation, and he spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill himself dealing with these issues. So when we come back, we're going to have that conversation. Plus, your calls are coming up, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations.
Thank you,
somebody.
sir.
It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
Do you think that the OMB, the executive branch, should use this shutdown as an excuse to permanently fire federal workers?
Well, I can tell you right now, the president has been a benevolent president. He is mitigating the harm right now. OMB has not come out of the blocks and fired a bunch of people. That's not what's happening.
But do you think they should?
Well, it provides an opportunity. Chuck Schumer has provided the Trump White House with an opportunity to downsize the government on priorities and policies and personnel that they deem to be non-essential. Now, Chuck Schumer has very different priorities about federal
what's
government.
What's your priority? You're the Speaker of the House. You can
I
say
certainly want to downsize the size and scope of the federal government.
So you think that people who are maybe furloughed right now, or even working without pay, should be on the chopping block for permanent dismissal?
I wouldn't say that, because the people that are furloughed right now are hardworking American federal workers.
Who should be fired during the shutdown?
I don't know. You'd have to show me a proposal of what is being presented.
I don't have a proposal.
I don't have it either, but I have a conference call with Russ Vought at OMB in about 2 hours, and we're going to ask him about the details of that. But I'll tell you right now.
So this is happening.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to find out what his plans are. But I will tell you this. Right now, who's being harmed are women, infants, and children. Their nutrition program is stalled. Veterans who are not getting their services right now, and very important services like suicide prevention. That's a day-to-day thing.
No question.
They're unfunded.
I mean, it's horrible.
FEMA's not funded right now for insurance
That
policies.
is temporary.
That is Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, and having a conversation with Fox News Channel. And let me tell you, I think that's a conversation we need to have. I'm glad they didn't ask me, because I would have said, yes, I do think they need to be fired. I think anybody, if you're not at work and we're able to continue the function of our government, at least half of them, right? I mean, it seems to me like we don't need them. I don't know. Call me crazy. Maybe we can get Richard Stern to straighten me out and tell us what's really going on here. Richard Stern, of course, spent some time working in Congress, and of course now he's over at the Heritage Foundation as director of the Center for the Federal Budget. Richard Stern, welcome back.
Hey, thank you so much for having me back on again.
You bet. I'd love to get into this because I know you understand this stuff, and I really want to get, we've heard a lot from the political perspective all day and since yesterday. I want to get the nuts and bolts of it. Obviously, I do have a concern for people that are that utilize WIC, that get the Women, Infants, and Children program and the related supports with that. I think that is an important thing. It's hard enough to qualify for it. So, I know the people that are on it typically are deserving. We want to have the military paid, that's for sure. But outside of those things, I think there's a number of things that were highlighted during DOGE, and this might be an opportunity to downsize the size of the government. Your thoughts?
I think you're right on both parts of that. What's important here to remember is this is not what Republicans wanted. Republicans in Congress, the president, none of them wanted a shutdown for the reasons you just talked about, which is that, look, there were all these legitimate debates to have them during the normal political process. What is frankly insane that we are watching is that congressional Democrat leadership is shutting down the government, putting WIC benefits at risk and all of these other things you talked about because they want to play partisan politics. It's shameful. But you're right, and the speaker's right, which is that, look, if you don't provide funding, then the government in the long run can't do anything. And so it absolutely presents an opportunity to say, look, if you're going to start making Russ vote and Trump triage with limited funds they've got left, then don't be surprised when they put out a plan on how to triage. And part of that is trimming the fat out of the government.
So going down that road, right, trimming the fat, and I think that's something we should always do is trim the fat from our government. What does it look like from your estimation? How far apart are we with, from each side, Democrat, Republican, to getting to a deal?
So I think we're very far apart, in part because, as I said, I think the congressional Democrat position is frankly ludicrous. And part of what I mean by that is what they have offered up for their demands would double the spending in these bills, would be a tremendous amount of waste and bloat, would actually intentionally increase fraudulent benefits going out the door. Look, they know this is absurd. They're doing this for the shock value. They're doing this for the politics of it. That's what they're looking like. But as long as they're doing that, it's actually hard to know how far apart we really are on a deal.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That's a real good statement there. I know they're doing some of this, all of it for the politics. Mike, I guess the point I'm missing here, Richard Stern, and I didn't really want to talk to you about the politics of it because you really have a great understanding of the budget, but I don't get their political play here. There's not an election tomorrow. There's not an election. By the time there's an election, this will be a ancient history, and I don't think it's a winning point for Democrats. What am I missing?
So actually, I think part of what you're talking about there is why it's almost one of these horseshoe theories where it makes so little sense that it almost makes sense again. But let me walk you through my thought on this. So because there isn't an election tomorrow, I think they feel like they've got the luxury that they could try this out, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
But right, I think no harm, no foul.
Yeah, exactly. But there's one other thing I think that they're posturing off against, which is that I don't think their concern at the moment is the American electorate. I think their concern at the moment are people like AOC, like the Squad, these far left progressives who could challenge them in the primaries. I think what they're trying to do is signal, is head nod, is put up a fight, show some backbone so that the grassroots activists, the donor, the money bundlers, all of those people don't go looking for far left liberal progressive primary challengers for people like Schumer and some of these other people, or frankly take over the primaries for the House seats and give Democrats in the Senate House counterparts who are just insane to work with. So I think there's a little bit of this kind of inside baseball politics that's going on that's not really meant for consumption for the American public. It's meant for their voters back home in these circles.
That's well put, and maybe I'll buy it, maybe not. Let me mull on it over the break. Folks, we're coming back with Richard Stern, Director of the Center for the Federal Budget at the Heritage Foundation, and when we return, he's going to explain to us the impact this is going to have on the American economy. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it indifferent? Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. Richard Stern from the Heritage Foundation, and me, Rich Valdés.
No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdés.
Democrats in Congress have officially shut down the United States government. House Republicans passed a nonpartisan, clean piece of legislation to extend current government funding until November 21st. But nearly every single Democrat senator voted against this bill. To be clear, this was the exact same bill that Democrats approved 6 short months ago in March, just adjusted for inflation. This is the same kind of clean funding bill that Democrats passed 13 separate times when they held the majority during Joe Biden's administration. So the American people woke up this morning and asked the obvious question: Why is the government shut down right now? The answer is pure partisan politics being played by the Democrat Party. The Democrats shut down the government because President Trump and the Republicans will not force American taxpayers to pay for free health care for illegal aliens. America is $37 trillion in debt. We cannot afford to provide taxpayer-funded free health care to illegals who broke the law to enter our country. To put this all into perspective, the Democrats refuse to keep the government open over health care to illegal aliens and now have jeopardized critical health care programs for American citizens instead. The Women, Infants, and Children program, community health center funding, Medicare treatment options, and other health programs are now all at risk because of the Democrats rejecting the clean CR. The most vulnerable in our country are being punished because the Democrats want to prioritize illegals over American citizens.
That again, the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt just putting the facts out there for everybody to understand that this is the Democrats' shutdown and the reason that they're doing it. I want to get some reaction to that from our guest, Richard Stern. He's director of the Center for the Federal Budget at the Heritage Foundation. And, of course, he spent time in Congress himself. And Richard Stern, when you were a staffer in Congress, you've seen this process many, many times. This is not anything new, I would suspect. But I'm wondering if we're going to have another record-breaking 35 days. Your thoughts?
We might. In fact, I was working in Congress the last time we had that one. And, you know, what I can tell you then is that it's a little bit of that everybody bumbled into it. Nobody really was hoping for that or anticipating it. But it's one of those where there was a failure of leadership that led into that process. Now, what I will tell you I think is different this time is, at least on, frankly, the Republican side of it, they seem to know what they're asking for, what they're looking for. And I think that might change this a little bit. But again, you know, it's hard to know really just what Democrats are thinking about this. It's so off the wall. You know, the party of large government didn't like that the government wasn't large enough. And so they are, you know, checks notes, shutting down the government. That's how committed they are to large government policies. It makes no sense.
What do you think about this, I guess, this linchpin of the argument here, right? The Republicans are doubling down, saying this is because you want to have illegal immigrants with health care funding. They're doubling down on adding $1.5 trillion in all sorts of crazy funding programs. Where do you think there's some common ground?
I think what's going on here is that, you know, Democrats are offering this just like throw everything at the wall, see what sticks maneuver. I think they know that what they're asking for is really ludicrous. I do not think there has been a bigger ask list on a shutdown fight ever, like in my knowledge on this. And I think part of what that goes to is they're just trying to see if any of it sticks. You know, there are some of these programs where there are voters on both sides who like it, where they might be able to get moderate Republicans. And so I think that's part of what they're doing here is seeing if they can get some buy-in on both sides and see if they can cut a deal off of that, which is kind of to say that both sides, but certainly the Democrats, are kind of testing out the other side. That's almost how far we are from having a deal at the moment.
So let's talk about, I guess, that end of it. If we have this more protracted thing, what are the nuts and bolts of this? Is there, I guess, how does it get worse from here?
So the longer that we go without formal funding, the more services shut down. So, you know, WIC is going to run out of money soon, but the more that we go on, there's other things that will. There's also all kinds of regulatory bodies. There's entities that process things, the IRS. I mean, you know, so if it goes on long enough, it adds an enormous amount of extra uncertainty to how businesses function, but all the way down to how individuals that rely on programs, health programs, food programs, what they're going to be seeing. But the other side of this is, you know, if it goes past 60 some odd days, then it means that the RIF notices, those are the reduction in force notices, can start to take effect. And really the way of saying this is, you know, when Congress funds a federal office at, you know, 100 employees, you got to have 100 people. But if Congress fails to fund it, and if the White House says, look, we could implement all the laws that this agency covers with 10 people, not 100, then they can fire the other 90. And so if the shutdown goes on long enough, it gives the White House the opportunity to do that.
How does that figure in with Trump's plan to do a staff reduction here? If he says, can he start tomorrow, or does he have to wait those 60 days?
He has to wait the 60 days. And again, I don't know why Democrats are giving this to him. And what it really does come down to is, look, we know that almost all these bureaucracies are bloated. We know that all of the laws signed in really require far fewer staff to implement them, to provide needed services, to fulfill core constitutional functions. The reason that the bureaucracies are overweighted and bloated is that Congress keeps saying, I don't really care. We just want to put more money on the table to have more bureaucrats. But once the funding's gone, you can send out the notices, as OMB's doing, and then from 60 days from sending out the notice, you can then let go of the staffers. And if Congress still has not funded those extra staff, then the White House can finally give you back your taxpayer dollars and say, we're only going to employ the bureaucrats we need to follow the law, which is how it should be. Keep in mind, every extra bureaucrat is tax dollars stolen from you and handed to a bureaucrat.
Yeah, really well put. I'm so curious to see how this plays out. Of course, I'm one of those people that I could, if we lost half the size of the government, I'd be the happiest camper, despite the pains that are associated with it. Good thing I'm not in Congress, right?
Well, no, if everybody thought like you, we'd have more money in our pocketbooks.
Amen to that. So, all right, let's find out how we can learn more about Richard Stern and the work you're doing at Heritage.
Well, thank you. You can find me on Rich A. Stern at Rich A. Stern on X. You can also go to the heritage.org website, see everything I put out, that of my team. And, of course, as this goes on, you'll see all of us on X. You'll see us publish things. And our door is always open. We're always happy to provide analysis. And thank you for having me on, of course.
Oh, I definitely will. And we'll be knocking on that door really soon, because this is an interesting phenomenon to me. I get your analysis on the horseshoe, and I think it makes sense. I just think it's a horrible political calculation, in my opinion, a horrible one. I mean, they're playing right into Trump's hands. He's actively trying to make sure New York City doesn't get a Zohran Mamdani. And they're giving him all the opportunity to say, we don't have the money to fund this project. He's already talking about not funding certain projects for New York City. I think it's a bad political move for Democrats. And I don't know, maybe they're working with Trump. Maybe it's part of the deal. Who knows?
Maybe. Well, I think you're ultimately right about that. But, part of what this shows you is when politicians lose all touch of reality with their voters and people back home and just normal Americans, this is the kind of stuff that happens. It's important for politicians to stay grounded, at least as much as they can be.
Yeah, good point. Richard Stern, everybody. Thank you, sir. Godspeed to you. Talk to you soon.
You too. Thank you again.
Yes, sir. And amigos, we continue. Your thoughts, your calls, your reactions on the government shutdown. What are your thoughts? How long do you think? I'm taking bets here. How long do you think this government is going to be shut down? Will it be 35 days, less than 35 days? I want to know your thoughts. I want to hear from people in New York. I want to hear from my friends in California, from my friends in Oregon, my friends in Pittsburgh, friends in Florida. Where's Chicago at? I haven't heard from anybody in Chicago tonight. I'm looking for everybody in between all across the country. 833-482-5337 is the phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The shutdown pausing two huge projects here in our area. The Trump administration is freezing roughly $18 billion to pay for the 2nd Avenue subway extension and new rail tunnel under the Hudson River. Eyewitness News reporter Lauren Glassberg looks at the impact and how it's all connected.
Democratic lawmakers blocked a Republican stopgap measure yesterday, leading to a federal government shutdown. And today, the White House retaliated.
They're freezing $18 billion in infrastructure funding, including the Gateway Tunnel and the 2nd Avenue subway.
The announcement came in the form of a tweet from the director of the Office of Management and Budget. The reason? The administration wants to reassess whether construction money is going to illegal DEI initiatives. And that review process, according to the U.S. Department of Transportation, will now take more time because federal staff has been furloughed.
Oh my God!
Ariana Locke is shocked that the extension of the 2nd Avenue subway line into Harlem is now being used as a bargaining chip.
I'm constantly taking the 6 train, the Q train and everything. And my office is in Harlem, so we're right near 125th, so we're always around those areas. So these things are needed.
Additional subway stops in Harlem would save time for 100,000 commuters.
Well, then maybe Democrats need to do that. Last I checked, there's not a lot of Republicans in Harlem. But my hope is that those constituents will reach out to their Congress people and say, hey, guys, what are you doing? Can you take your heads out of your butt and please vote for the funding for the 2nd Avenue project? This is the part that I don't get. How is it that they're going to try and hang it on Trump? Trump is basically saying, oh, by the way, I'm taking a look at this thing. Oh, I can't take a look at this thing. Why? Because there's no money. Pendejos. It's not like if Trump didn't say anything, they'd have their money. The money's frozen. It's so fascinating to me, the way they can try and make anything about Trump. The reality is this isn't about Trump. Good for him, retaliating. What's the retaliation? He's making it clear. By the way, we're checking this thing out. Now you're saying if he's going to look at DEI stuff, would he have looked at the DEI stuff if we had a clean CR? Maybe not. Maybe he wouldn't have the need to start trimming fat and looking at things to make things tighter had we gotten through this process to say, all right, let's get a CR till November. Heck, let's go a step further. Maybe, just maybe, it would be a nice world that we lived in if we passed a balanced budget. You know I say that, and I bet you there's a bunch of people listening to me saying, oh, come on, Rich, we haven't passed a balanced budget in, I don't know, longer than my oldest daughter's been alive. How about that? So when you start to look at the history of things and you realize, oh, wow, guess what? We don't do that anymore. The United States government operates by CR, continuing resolutions, not by balancing a budget, which is what's called for in the Constitution. I mean, come on. How do we get back to, when I hear Make America Great Again, I think of the time when we actually had a federal budget that was balanced. How about that for making America great? And I think we can get there if the Democrats get out of the way. Unbelievable. Anyway, I want to get into your phone calls. The phone number, you know it well, hopefully, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to go to Lee, calling us from Burlington, Vermont, WVMT. Lee, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdés.
Well, before I address what I wanted to talk about, how long is it going to be before they get together and actually get at least a continuing resolution to get things in order before for a budget? The thing that I think that the Biden administration and the election, the Democrats are still so disorganized, they don't have a chief to tell the Indians in the tribe what to do.
Could be, because I'll tell you, this politically doesn't seem like a win to me for Jeffries. It doesn't seem like a win to me for Schumer and Democrats overall. When they go back to their districts, I don't care how much they say Trump, 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 Trump. At the end of the day, I think people are going to realize Trump, if Trump decided to talk about what kind of just for men hair dye he uses, and I'm not saying he does, but if he did, they would pay attention to that. He gets more press action than anybody. So you have to realize you're dealing with somebody who has the ability to get a message out like very few other human beings on this planet. Why would you want to mess with this guy to try and change the truth? You got to be honest, and people are going to realize the truth is the Democrats voted down 3 measures to keep the government open. That's a matter of fact. It's a matter of public record, and I don't think Democrats are going to be able to get away from that, Lee.
Well, here's the other thing I wanted to talk to you about. I had a situation where I'm afraid I have an MD, a primary care provider, who may be on drugs. She acts like she's on uppers.
Oh,
she acts like she's up on drugged. I think she's getting addicted to drugs because she will not slow her speech down. No matter, I've told her twice, you're speaking too fast. Please slow down. And instead, she turns her head away and looks at the computer screen, and she still keeps chattering way too fast for anyone to listen to her. And this has happened twice now, and I wondered what you would do if you had a situation where this person is not paying attention to what the patient is saying. When the patient has had more experience with people who have been drugged, and the doctor doesn't know it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. I learned I'll tell you 3 things. The first thing is my dad taught me this lesson when I was younger. It may not be right, but it's when he taught me, and I've held on to it. The gist of it. And that was, my dad told me, I was like, oh, we got to go to this guy. He's a specialist. I was helping him with his medical care. And he looked at me and he said, I don't care who's a specialist. If I have more gray in my beard than that guy, I don't want to see him. And it was probably the wrong approach, but the gist of it made sense to me. He wanted to go to an experienced doctor. And the reality is some doctors, like my dad, that had gray in their beard, they knew how to do things the old school way and the new school way. And in my opinion, they are better physicians. Now, that doesn't mean that there are some young physicians that are not way better than the old school physicians because of all the new technology. So I'm not ruling that out, but that was something he taught me. And I think there's a lot to be said for patients that know their own body, especially patients that have a lot of experience. If you have a lot of experience, whether it's in identifying people that are high on drugs or just your own body, I think doctors definitely need to pay attention to that. Now, back to your question on what I would do. Quickly, for me, I would likely make a joke about it. I would say something like, what, do you have ADD like me? Take some Adderall, or you're taking too much Adderall. That'd probably be one of the things I'd say. Or B, I might be so bothered by it, I might just say, you know what, I'm not going back to this doctor anymore. And if it was really irking me, I'd probably file some sort of complaint, which I've never done. I haven't had the need for that, but, it seems like the appropriate thing to do if that's what you've assessed. Lee, I got to pause right here. Thank you for your call. God bless you. WVMT, don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
All right, amigos, welcome back to the phones. We go very quickly. Danny, Washington, D.C., WMAL. Go right ahead quickly.
Hey, Rich, I actually work for a company down here in D.C. that's based up in New York. And the 2nd Avenue tunnel that you were mentioning, that project's been awarded. I mean, it's not something that they're getting ready to have bids on. It's already been awarded. And my immediate safety supervisor, my safety director for the company that I work for on a joint tunnel job down in D.C., he's probably going to be beside himself tomorrow.
Yeah, well, again, if the government was open, what Trump is saying he'd be able to do, he'd be able to do. And he can't do it if the government's not open. So, again, this doesn't behoove the Democrats in any way, shape, or form. Danny, thank you for your call. Shout out to WMAL. Hasta la próxima. Take care, and I'll be right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdés, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdés.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdés, Valdés with an S, at Rich Valdés on all of the social media. Welcome back, another hour live and national, 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdés. And people get frustrated. Some people get angry. This last month, I'd say, has been full of every emotion you could think of. The tragedy of Charlie Kirk's assassination, combined with all of the news that's been just coming out of Washington, D.C. and all over the world, quite frankly. The news about the Hamas and Gaza ceasefire, or the end of the war, the deal, the board of peace that President Trump proposed, seemingly not being welcomed. Right? It seems like Hamas is not jumping on this, and that's a shame, right? It's a shame of what may happen as a result. And, I tend to look at this and look at, some of the reaction that we got to it. Many people saying, that's the plan. Like, that is the plan. It's the only plan that we can actually think everybody could live with. And, sadly, it seems like it's... It looks like a non-starter. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong stuff. I hope I'm wrong. But it looks like Hamas wants to go out with a bang. And the worst part of this is, how they defend themselves with innocent people. And my hope is that that's not the case. But I'll keep you up to speed on that as I know more about it. I'll share it with you for sure. And some of the stuff we're talking about tonight, obviously the government shutdown. The government's still shut down. Yep. Still shut down, and Portland, Oregon, still ablaze with crazies. I think the federal government is now, cracking down a little more. I saw some video of them getting very aggressive with these very violent left-wing Antifa people, and it's wild to think that we're looking at America. This is stuff that I'd only read about. This is stuff that I only had guests on my shows and talked about, their parents, right? Like we had a guest on recently, Joe Connor. His dad was killed by an FALN terrorist. And that happened when he was a child. So he's telling me a story about his parents, right? Not something I personally saw, but now I'm personally seeing, Antifa people just do the wildest and craziest things, firing at law enforcement, using fireworks, using umbrellas, using bear spray, and just all sorts of really crazy stuff that, honestly, it's like, wow. I remember a few years back, 2017, I have a brother that always, he's been telling me, good men are going to have to do bad things. They're going to push us. They're going to get very, very violent. And I was like, all right, you're right. I really dismissed a lot of what he was saying, and here so much of it is really actually happening, right? I mean, it's comical. I'm looking at one picture here of a woman, and this woman is, no lie, wearing glasses that are so large, she looks like she might have borrowed them from somebody that works at a circus. They're like clown apparel. I'm not trying to make fun of her. I'm saying they're like really large, double the size of her face, purple frame. Black bandana on her head, black mask on her face, hooded sweatshirt, blonde hair sticking out the back. And this woman is, it says here, on the run. Protester flees police after ICE building assault. This is, it's just crazy. It's crazy what's going on, but that's actually happening. The Democrats are shutting down the government. Third time they voted against a measure that would keep the government open. President Trump says, well, we're going to have to make do with the limited funds we have, including certain projects that have been funded, right? We're looking, if we have to look at a certain project because we think that it doesn't comply with certain laws or executive orders. In the case of the New York case with the Second Avenue tunnel, guess what? They're not able to do it if they're not able to do it. And that's nobody's fault but the Democrats. And you could blame Trump all you want for playing politics. I think that's kind of what you do in Washington, right? Obama was an expert at it. He's been doing it even through the Biden administration. He was doing it, so it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. But all of this stuff, it gets people angry, right? People get frustrated, they get angry. And when you're angry, sometimes certain situations are like a powder keg where, normally somebody cuts you off and you're like, oh, what a moron. Other times somebody cuts you off, you slam on your brakes and you're like, you maybe scream out the window. Other times you flip them the one-fingered friendship finger salute. But now people are getting real aggressive. And there's some talk about road rage being on the increase. And there's a study out. Listen to this. 96% of drivers now admit to having road rage. I'm wondering, did they take this survey in the Northeast? Right? Is this New York and New York metropolitan area? Long Island, Jersey? I want to know. Because let me tell you, it's hard to drive anywhere around here. My daughter went away to college. She went to Liberty University in Virginia. She graduated this past May. And she's moved not far from Liberty and lives in Virginia. And I can tell you this. She comes to visit and she's like, wow, people here are aggressive. She was born here. So I'm just thinking, those folks in the South, that Southern hospitality, definitely rubbing off on her. Good for her. Happy for it. And makes me want some of it. I don't want to go to Virginia, but I would love to relocate to Florida, where every day I wake up and look at palm trees. Anyway, getting off on a tangent here. That's the ADHD. But road rage. I want to get into some road rage conversation because I think it's fascinating that it used to be few and far between. Now I think it's happening a little bit all too often. So we're going to talk about that. We'll continue the news of the day, but I want to kind of switch gears and talk about mental health because people are wigging out on the road. So keep it locked right here. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
This is video of a man jumping out of his vehicle and physically assaulting a driver in another car. It happened in the middle of the day in Central Phoenix. This past Saturday, a driver was shot and killed following a confrontation between two motorists in front of a Starbucks. And Wednesday morning, a driver was shot along Interstate 10 in another suspected case of road rage.
There's individuals who have that propensity towards violence.
We sat down with former Phoenix police detective Darren Birch to get his take on why we're seeing so many incidents of road rage lately. He says when people are on edge and stressed out about things going on in their lives, it doesn't take much for them to lose their temper and lash out.
It doesn't have to be somebody who's already on the criminal spectrum. It could be just a normal person that just is having a really bad time in their life. Stress building. Then they're in what might be a normal situation. Somebody cuts them off and they lose it. And all of a sudden become violent and outraged. And thus road rage.
There is certainly a collective amount of extreme agitation, stress, and volatility happening.
Aaron Nelson is a forensic psychologist who says a lot of people these days are dealing with a lot of anger and anxiety stemming from their jobs, finances, relationships, and the hostility they see on social media about their community and what's going on across the country. So when they get behind the wheel, they are often on edge and prone to make bad decisions.
That wouldn't be a direct translation to I'm going to shoot the person in the car next to me or I'm going to provoke somebody. But you're operating from a place of already having all that on board. It is more important than ever, whether it's on the road or in a bar or at a restaurant or at an athletic event, that we do two things. One is to try to give people grace rather than respond with immediate anger.
I agree with that. The message of grace is always a good one. But the real concern here is how road rage seems to be on the rise, and a surprisingly high number of people admit to having road rage. Again, I'm looking at this study, 96% of drivers admitting to road rage, and I want to get into it because people seem to be more stressed out these days than they ever have been. And I mean, I guess there's a lot of reasons, right? Like the economy, multiple wars around the world, disagreements over different philosophical things, all sorts of things. So what does that mean for all of us? Well, I want to bring in Dr. Patrick Porter. He's the founder of BrainTap.com, and he's been studying the brain and discussing the brain for 3 decades, and he's with us now. Dr. Patrick Porter, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So let's talk about your take on this study on road rage.
Well, I think it's, the conscious mind can only take so much information. Once it gets overloaded, it's like blowing fuses. And, when you have a blown fuse, you're going to emote, your emotions are going to show up. And so I always say pause, break, breathe. That's what we need to do in this situation.
Now, for people who don't have a Dr. Patrick Porter in their life and don't know about pausing and breaking and breathing, is there some other, I guess, workaround here where, I guess, a way to avoid people from getting stretched so thin? Because it does seem to me that we're at a point in society, and maybe it's hyperbole, maybe it's the algorithm on my social media, I don't know. But I feel like people are a little less graceful, a little less forgiving than they have been in the past.
Oh yeah, I mean we're on our last good nerve, right? I mean everything that's happening, there's just one more brick, like they said that straw that broke the camel's back. This is what's happening, and they get in the car. That's a stressful event. I mean our brain is trying to interpret, going 55, 65, 75 miles an hour. It's trying to figure out what's going on. Then somebody cuts us off. Well, at that moment, the fear, the limbic brain kicks in, hijacks the amygdala, and then blood flow to your frontal cortex, which is that part of the brain that does the reasoning for you, is offline. Basically, you're offline. So you just start reacting in a very primitive way, and that's what we're seeing on the road today.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've experienced this. Mm-hmm. I've had a whole lot of road rage in my life. I used to work in Manhattan. And when I worked in New York City, I used to drive to work because I had free parking. I learned my lesson. I started taking the bus because I got into several accidents. And after a while, I was just like, if my car's already banged up, I have no problem banging up your car with mine. And things are wild in New York, especially with taxis. So I learned I need to not be on the road. And this was 2007. So I can only imagine how bad things are today.
Right. I think people don't prepare to drive calmly. They actually anticipate this. And when you anticipate it, you're actually looking for that trigger. Somebody might, swerve in front of you. They might tell you you're number one by using their middle finger, whatever's going on. And then that triggers you, and then that reaction, and it spirals. What they found was it's actually like, it's like what happens in groups, and I always tell people, what happens at a wedding? Somebody has to be the first one on the dance floor. Then 2 people come on. Then pretty soon the dance floor is full. But this is not a good thing. I mean, that's a good thing at the wedding. But when we're talking about driving, that's what happens on the roads. People start thinking that's the norm. When 96% of the people are having road rage, that's a big issue.
Yeah, 100%. Folks, we're on with Dr. Patrick Porter. Now, Dr. Porter, in what your, I guess, in your experience in dealing with the brain, would you say that we're at a critical point in history where we don't come back, or is this just the peak before a valley?
I think it's a peak before a valley because our brains were not designed for this lifestyle. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were walking, dragging our knuckles on the ground. I mean, on the scope of, reality, when you think about going back in time, we're here now. We think we know everything, but we only have 10,000 years of history. But the Earth's been around a long time. And our genetic information that's inside of us, our DNA, which is actually giving us codes to live by, they now know in neuroscience that it's not just about what we think, that we actually house within us. We learn from our mothers and fathers, and they learn from their mothers and fathers, and we have this ancestral kind of memory that, when you look at parents and how they drive, and then they teach their kids how to drive. I mean, when we're talking about road rage, this is a learned behavior.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. My daughter just visited me from Virginia. She had been experiencing Southern hospitality, and we took a ride. And her complaint to me was, oh, my gosh, you drive just like my other daughter. She was like my sister. And she's like, you guys are like twins. And I said, oh, man, I'm teaching her all my bad stuff. And since I was a young dad, I tried to always, be very cautious behind the wheel so that they would, because I knew they were watching. I guess I didn't do good enough.
Right. Yeah, I know. There was a time I was with my wife, my first wife. We had a daughter together, and she was screaming and yelling at a car, and then they happened to stop at the same stoplight. Well, when she looked over, the other car was now laughing hysterically and pointing at the back seat. My daughter was in the back seat. She was in her baby seat, and she was flipping the car off. And that just everybody erupted in laughter because the child learns from the parents.
Right. That's so funny.
Somebody has to break that cycle.
Yeah, and I guess that's what we're all here to do, to break the cycle. Folks, we're breaking the cycle with Dr. Patrick Porter, discussing what goes on with road rage. Dr. Patrick Porter, I want you to let everybody know how they can learn more about BrainTap and how to get in touch with you.
Right. If they go to BrainTap.com, we actually have a free app they can download and get. It's all an energy equation. When you're leaving work, maybe in the morning you had a good night's sleep, somebody pulls in front of you, no problem, you're okay. But at the end of the day, when you're stressed out, you've just gone through the whole days of work, and you're at your last good nerve, as I said, then that one thing happens. That can be the spark that starts the fire. You've got to reset.
Yeah.
And BrainTap.com
before we run out
can
of time,
give you
just
those
give
resets.
everybody your website, please.
Yeah, BrainTap.com. They can go there.
BrainTap.com, Dr. Patrick Porter. Thank you. Excellent advice. I look forward to having you back. And Godspeed to you, sir. Amigos, we will come back with the rest of your thoughts, your calls, your reactions, and your road rage stories. I want to hear all about it. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ, taking your calls on all of the news of the night. And I see we're going to start with calls from Virginia. So don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdés.
Look at Rich Valdés. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
1 of 10 drivers admits they've exhibited road rage, and 9 out of 10 say they're guilty of aggressive driving.
Our Foundation for Traffic Safety looked at these numbers very similarly in 2016, and unfortunately we've seen an increase in most of the behaviors that we looked at. So cutting people off, that number is up, I want to say, by about 67%. Honking your horn at other people is up by about 47%.
The study's results come as no surprise to Maryland State Police, who say they recognize that aggressive driving was skyrocketing during the pandemic. Following 3 road rage killings, which remain unsolved today, it formed a highway gun violence task force, which has tracked well over 200 incidents, resulting in the seizure of 91 guns to date. The breakdown includes 184 cases for people brandishing guns, 39 involving shots fired, and a total of 79 firearm-related arrests.
If you are ever involved in something like this, is getting an accurate description of the vehicle, make and model. Are there unique bumper stickers? Even a partial tag could be helpful for investigators in tracking down people involved in these incidents.
Of course, experts say avoiding conflict is the best course of action. And if you think about trying to make better time out on the road by taking chances, you should think again.
I believe there was a study done by this police department, I want to say in Texas, and you literally save no time. So as you're racing and cutting in and out of traffic and cutting people off, you're really not saving any time.
That might be the realest thing I've heard in a long time. Now, I'm not a fast driver. I am very grandma. I'm an abuela behind the wheel. I really am. But occasionally I might drive quickly, but really it's not my thing. I don't get off on it. Some people love, like their speed is 90. Nah, my speed's like 60. I'm a right lane kind of guy. But I'll tell you this. There have been so many times that I've been, whether it's driving down to D.C. or some other, long trip I have to take, sometimes driving down to the Jersey Shore in the summertime. And somebody flies past you. And you're like, man, what a jerk. Only for him to be next to me and for me to pass him while I'm doing 60. Or if it's a brave day for me, maybe doing 70. And I think to myself, how do I always catch up to these guys when I'm not driving as fast as them? They're weaving in and out. They're driving in the shoulder. They're going everywhere. And there I am, slow and steady, staying in the right lane or the middle lane. I'm usually in the middle lane, but I can be a right lane guy. And I catch up to them. Sometimes I even pass them because then they piss off the other drivers, and other drivers kind of box them in so they can't cut them off. And they're in this pissing match with the other people. And I'm just there, keep going right there in my middle lane, minding my business. And, I use the GPS a lot. I'm not anti-GPS. I'm very pro-GPS because I tend to get distracted. I'm looking out the window, the ADHD. So the frequent little voice, turn left, 200 feet, that lady, works really well for me. And I always look at the clock, and I'm thinking the times that I have driven faster than I should, it doesn't really speed things up that much. I mean, you'd have to drive really, really fast to shave off 5 minutes or so. Now, a shortcut, that might save you some time. Totally avoiding, a particular road that's backed up, definitely going to save you some time. But outside of that, driving fast typically doesn't get you there that much faster. My experience, and again, according to this survey as well. So I want to hear from you guys on the shutdown. I want to hear from you guys on your thoughts on a number of things that are going on with people being angry with road rage, people driving too fast, et cetera, et cetera. You name it, I want to talk about it. If you still want to fight with me about the Super Bowl, I'm okay with that as well. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdés. Let's go to Virginia. Checking in with James in Newport News, Virginia, WNIS. James, go right ahead.
No, Rich, how are you?
Wonderful, thank you, sir.
I actually called before you had the road rage thing on there, so I apologize. I'm not.
No, that's fine.
Going to be able to give you a road rage thing right now, and maybe that's a good thing. I wanted to mention I had kind of a supernatural thing happen to me today. I have a book out, and I had written a book about the supernatural things that happened to me and an angel, my mother died, and things like that. And then I redid it when I had this Revelation 12 came true on September 23rd, 2017. Now, not too many ministers or anybody talk about it or anything like that. And I heard Charlie talking about all kinds of stuff that I've been talking about now that we're showing his things, And even the minister's not telling people what's going on very much. But what I was calling about is I was doing my video. I've done about 12 now. And I was doing a video in the book, and I have a poem in the book. And I just quickly tell you the end of this. This is where the supernatural part came in. It's at the last stanza, whatever you call it in the poem. It says, "So if you are not a Christian or not sure of your own Christian way, then the devil is going to get you. He'll turn you into his slave." Now, heal, if you write down or just think of the word heal, HE''LL, it really looks like hell, So I put it in big red letters. Heal in big red letters with apostrophe, it still looks like hell. So when I was reading the poem in the video, to my knowledge at all, I went to review the video before I put it out on YouTube, and I read that part. Then the devil is going to get you. And then I held up, after I had said, he'll turn you into a slave, I held up the piece of paper in the front of the camera, and you can see where it says, turn you into his slave, for about a second and a half, 2 seconds, something like that. And then all of a sudden, the big red letters, hell, starts to show up out of nowhere on the left. It's like, wow, gosh, that's so cool, you know? Yeah, it's so impressive, like it's so striking that, like, the Lord saying, you know, yeah, hell, you know, there it is. He's emphasizing that even more than I was emphasizing it by capitalizing, you know, put it in red there. That was so cool. It's like the black letters turn you into his slave were just regular black letters and words. And
right,
then all
so
of
you're
a sudden,
saying that they changed color and whatnot. Very interesting stuff. I mean, I haven't experienced that and I haven't seen the video, but I can say I've heard plenty of stories, lots of testimonies through the years of people that have gone through very interesting supernatural things. And I myself, through my family, I've seen a lot of things happen. I saw my brother get killed in front of me, but he definitely nearly died in front of me and then died in the ambulance a little while after and came back. And he, you know, maybe one day I'll interview him about this whole outer body experience thing he went through. It was really quite something. And he's never quite been the same after that. So I know that certain people have the ability to sense certain things and they see things a different way because of previous experiences they've been through. And that's always just very remarkable. I don't put God in a box. James, Newport News, Virginia, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. WNIS in the building. And amigos, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the shutdown, a little bit more about whatever else is on your mind. And I also wanted to share a little bit about the things I've heard, all the reaction to the big scandal from the night before last of Bad Bunny hosting the Super Bowl halftime show, performing, and one of the things that I saw was Apple. Apple Music is the sponsor, and of course Apple Music's main competitor, I would say, is Spotify, and Mr. Bunny is the top streaming artist, or at least it vacillates between him and Taylor Swift for the last 3 years. And I think globally he's it, or at least has been at certain points of the last 3 years for good portions of it. Anyway, the NFL's been making a lot of moves to try and increase their Hispanic viewership and you know, like Europe and Spain and into Latin America with, you know, NFL Europe, NFL South America, that type of thing. And it seems like a decision that they made based on a whole lot of that. But when you factor that in with this stuff that Apple has, where they now have live translation in their latest AirPods, and these AirPods, apparently with Apple being the sponsor, might be made available during the Super Bowl. And I'm thinking, that is one heck of a way to sell something to everybody who's freaking out about, I don't understand it, I can't. It's an AI translator. So it would translate him, you know, through AI. And imagine that. Imagine being at the Super Bowl, not knowing what he's saying because you don't speak Spanish. And then voila. And again, my prediction is still that Bad Bunny's going to have a couple of songs in English that he likely didn't have before. And we'll see how it goes. I saw an interesting piece in Rolling Stone today that they said ICE has confirmed that they will be at the Super Bowl. When I saw the quote, that wasn't what they said at all. It was somebody from the Trump administration that said, there's nowhere in this country that you can hide or aid and abet an illegal alien. They took that to mean they're going to be there at the Super Bowl. And again, I'm not saying they shouldn't be at the Super Bowl. I'm just saying, you know, this isn't like Chavez Jr., the boxer, Julio Cesar Chavez, the boxer that was boxing, and then after he finished boxing with Jake Paul, on his way back to the locker room, he was arrested and deported. Right? That happened in California. That's not going to happen here. Bad Bunny's not on a visa, right? He's an American citizen. So that's not going to be the case. But just so interesting to see all the different things and the angles at how this will, you know, this has impacted so many people. So anyway, your thoughts and reactions on that stuff as well. 833-482-5790. 5337-8334-Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
You're educating America, and you are giving us an opportunity to speak freely. That's why I love this station, and I love your show.
America at Night with Rich Valdés.
Play behind Bad Bunny being chosen to headline the Super Bowl halftime show. And it's a genius move by Apple. On the surface, the main reason for picking Bad Bunny is because he's one of the biggest artists in the world and has international appeal. After all, the NFL is obsessed with being a global league. That's why they have games every season in London, Brazil, Germany, Spain. And newsflash to NFL fans, the halftime show isn't supposed to be for you because you're gonna watch the game anyway. They want to appeal to a wider audience that might not necessarily be interested in the game. Now, you might not listen to Bad Bunny and might not like him being selected as the halftime performer because you don't speak Spanish, and you might also say, hey, most Americans don't speak Spanish. Well, hold on a second. Who's the presenting sponsor for the Super Bowl halftime show? Apple Music. And what new product did Apple just release? The AirPods Pro 3. And what's the big new feature for the Apple AirPods 3? Live translation. So not only is this a great pick because Bad Bunny is one of the biggest artists in the world with international appeal, but Apple is going to be able to demonstrate the power of their new AI live translation feature in real time on one of the world's biggest stages.
That is Don Chen. He's a music commentator, and that's his take on this. I thought it was an interesting take, one that we're not hearing a lot about. And again, curious to hear your thoughts on road rage, on the government shutdown, and everything else that's going on. Let's head over to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, WWPA, and check in with John on line 5. John, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdés.
Good evening, Rich. Second-time caller. Glad to talk with you again. Just had a little story of road rage that popped into my head with your talk. And, I was probably around 18 or so, driving with my family down the highway in my first car, which was a 1989 Cadillac Coupe de Ville. And just heading down, and the guy was driving somewhat erratically and came up flying up behind me, and last minute passed me, and it kind of shook me the wrong way. So as he was passing me, I flipped him the bird, not thinking at all, and then he cut across in front of me, slowed down, and then wound up taking the same exit that we took on a local highway. Went from 65 to 55, got off the exit. He pulled over, rolled down the window yelling, and my dad rolled down the window. He was in the front seat, and it was a coupe, but my mom was in the back seat, and it somewhat degraded because then it was like, you flipped me off. What's your problem? This and that. And my mom, my son would never. And then I'm just there dying inside because I'm like, I'm such an idiot. I didn't think about it, and I just did it. And I had to, I'm sorry, I apologize. And the guy kind of calmed down, but it was just one of those things. I just did it without thinking, even with my parents in the car. And years driving through that exit, I would get upset or certain emotions just driving there.
Reliving it,
like,
right?
Man, it was such a dumb thing where you just do something without thinking, and it's really easy to do in a vehicle. And I understand why people anymore, I'm just like, that guy's a yahoo, and just let him do his thing.
Yeah, John, it's a great story. Thank you for sharing it. Thanks for calling the show. But, what's fascinating to me here is it might not have been such a bad idea if your parents weren't in the car, right? If they weren't there, it would be like, hey, F you, pal. I don't know. I think sometimes you just got to give that one finger. No, I'm kidding. I don't think that's advisable. And ultimately, I think you did the right thing. It sounds like you learned your lesson, and you're more mature than I am many times. But I'm glad you're able to laugh about it today and learn from it, right? Being that you drive through that section every time and have those emotions that kind of spring up each time. John in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, WWPA. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Let me see. You know what? I'll pause right here because I don't want to cut anybody off, and I have to take my break right around now. But I'll come back. We've got calls from Indiana, from Arkansas, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdés.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. Let us go to Nick calling us from Gary, Indiana. WLS, go right ahead, sir.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Good. I'd just like to comment on the situation in Chicago. God bless President Trump for sending the troops out there and then, cleaning up the town. But what's really amazing is how the mayor, who I call a barrelhead, and Porky Pig Pritzker, the governor, constantly deny that there's no crime going on in the city itself when they're rounding all these people up. And like I said, I'm a truck driver, and I'm actually on my way out to Ohio right now. But when I used to drive to Chicago during the day, some of the major expressways, such as Dan Ryan, they have to shut it down because of the gang shootings that are going on out there. And for these people to say that there's any type of plausible deniability in regards to the crime, how can they think their constituents in those areas can put up with their lies and their falsehoods?
You know, Nick, what's interesting about that is, I think you're right on the account that the Democrats ignore crime. They've been redefining crime for so long that ultimately, they say, oh, this shouldn't be a violent crime. That shouldn't be a violent crime. That's not really violent. That they're making the case, just like Mandami is in New York, to invite crime. And I think it's a serious case of denial. Nick, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. WLS in the building. Let's go to Joe, Salem, Arkansas, very quickly. Go right ahead.
Yeah, Rich, thank you for the call. That WIC program, for my money, can be done away with permanently. They encourage, SNAP's a good thing. Now, don't get me wrong on that. That keeps the economies going in the flyover country. And people do pretty good with that and get whatever they want. But on WIC, they encourage high-acid foods, starting with baby formulas, mostly high-fructose corn syrup. And that's why
I
the
don't know exactly what goes into it, Joe, but I'll say this. I think one of the key things that separates the United States from as a first world country, a developing world country, from third world countries is the fact that we have somewhat healthier babies. And of all the government programs, this one seems to be one that is working. At least some statistics show that it is. No doubt that there's room for improvement, and getting away from sugar is something we should all be doing. But I don't know if getting rid of it, you have to be at 185% of poverty. So that might be tough for really, really, really destitute people. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America.